name is Alysia Lee Asp. I am from Creativity Consulting and Solwell Center. Nice to meet you and be a guest today. Yes, please call me Alysia. I am originally from the U.S.A. I have been in Shanghai for 9 years. I've been an art educator, an entrepreneur. I've studied creativity, and I've done a lot of coaching and consulting. And especially now, that's the main thing that I'm doing. There's tons to know about me. I do lots of things. I don't sleep much. So I was in the U.S.A. and I was teaching full-time, and I had my own business full-time. So I was doing 2 full-time jobs. So about 20 to 30 hours a week. I had my own art studio and school. It was a center. We had a gallery space. We taught kids and adults. I helped artists to promote their work and sell it. I even sold art supplies. I did like everything at that place. And then I also worked full-time at a high school teaching photography, graphic design, and art. And at that time, I went through a divorce. I had been married for 16 years, and it didn't work out. And I lived in my center and my studio. And I noticed that even though I was making a lot of money, between the taxes and the insurances and everything in the USA, that I wasn't ending up with hardly any money at the end of the month, especially as a single person. So one day I was looking at my DVDs. It was a while ago, right? And so I have my DVDs, and I had my favorite ones. My favorite ones were all about somebody who left the country and started their life over. And I said, "Oh, Alysia, you're so stupid. Why are you here?" So I decided to sell everything. And I had a friend who was teaching in Africa, and I sent her a message and I said, "How do I do this?" And I started to get jobs for the international schools. I looked at it. Within 2 months, I had a job in Korea. And within the next 6 months, I sold everything. My center, my car. I got down to 5 suitcases. I came to Korea. I was there for 2 months. The school went bankrupt. The parents had to keep it going so the kids could graduate. I became vice principal, even though I had no training in that whatsoever. And during that time, I interviewed, and I got a job in Shanghai at Shanghai American School. And so I went back home for the summer, and then I got to Shanghai, and I've been here ever since. When I first got here, it was full-on Shanghai American School. I was teaching middle school art, and it was in Pudong, near the airport. So even then, the commute, they have buses, but the commute was 45 minutes each way. So you're looking at very long 50 to 60-hour weeks usually. So I did that, but I loved it. And I loved Jinqiao, which is where I was living. It was a bit of an expat bubble, but it was comfortable. And at that time, I started to explore my other interests. So I started taking piano lessons again because I write music and I really love that. And I even started performing some blues jazz on the side with some people that I had met that I was introduced to. And it was a great time to really explore a lot of what I wanted to do and what I loved. The business, there's a lot of ups and downs, and nobody can really predict all the stuff that's happening with all of these regulations and with COVID. And that's been a bit rocky, right? So when I started, I knew that the consulting and creativity business and coaching was going to be okay. When we decided to do this wellness center, I knew it was more of a risk. I knew, because whenever you have a brick and mortar business, especially in Shanghai, you have risks because there's high overhead and you have to deal with that. But I knew that it had the most potential to help the most amount of people here in the city. And I love the city. I've been here 9 years, and I really saw a huge need for wellness that was not just the physical wellness, not just the sound healing, because there's 2 ends of the spectrum, but everything in between. Because if you don't have your mindset right, if you don't have your emotions set, those things suffer. So it's more holistic. You have to work on all of these areas to get really stabilized. And that was where we came from. However, We opened in November, late November of 2021. We reopened in beginning of February, and things were getting really set. We started to have full schedules, more and more people were coming, and then the next round happened. And then, of course, I'm more cautious about it. If you have a center or a space, you don't want to be one that's had cases, because if you do, then there's this stigma that goes into people's minds. So even in March, we started to limit the amount of things that were happening here. And then, of course, the lockdowns happened. And unfortunately, we did not get any discounts from our landlords or anything, even though it was a government-owned building. So with all of that, we got to the place where after lockdown was over, technically we're still not allowed to have events here, and without government permission and going through a lot of things. So we got to this point where we can't really afford to keep this big, beautiful place and still operate. During the lockdown, we went to online, and it was okay. So now I'm going to be changing the whole shift of what I'm doing and what the center's doing. When you're a creative person, just doing one thing, one box, one label, is typically not enough to feed your imagination and feed your motivation. I have found that the creatives I've worked for usually have to have a couple of projects at the same time, or they really feel stagnant. I'm all about like water, right? So water has to keep moving, and there's a lot of sources of water that come in to make that stream go. For me, it's like breathing. You know, it's not about multitasking. It's more about living my life in multiple dimensions at the same time so that I'm well-rounded. But what I'm really great at is integrating everything, which is harder for people to understand. But I find that when I'm coaching or I'm helping people, it's so much better because I can relate to them. So for example, even in this room with the crew who's here and all of you, I'm sure that I have one thing at least in common with each of you. Maybe one of you loves dancing. Maybe one of you loves singing. Maybe one of you is very into entrepreneurship. Maybe one of you is into women's empowerment. Maybe one of you loves cats. And it also helps me to help people to be able to put the pieces of their life together. So I balance those things, and then I can help other people to balance those things as well so they can live a more full life. It is super supportive. There are more entrepreneurs here. It's such a land of opportunity. For female entrepreneurs in specific, this is an amazing place.